Chapter 5. The Law of Averages. As agreed, Jerry returned the following week. After catching up on a few things, we turned our attention to his personal development system. "Well, how did you do?" I asked. Jerry reached in his case and produced his calendar. I was happy to see the entire week was complete, and Jerry seemed to be getting the hang of how the system worked. He replied by saying, "I had a few good days, and a few not so good days, as you can see." I took a moment to review his sheet before pulling out a blank sheet of paper and a pen. I then proceeded to write down the days of the week and the points he had given himself for that particular day. Once I had finished, I added up Jerry's points and wrote the total number under the days. The end result looked something like this. Monday, 4 points, perfect day. Tuesday, 3.5 points. Wednesday, 2 points. Thursday, 2 points. Friday, 2.75 points. Saturday, 3 points. Sunday, 2 points. Total, 19.25 points. Next, I took out a small calculator and divided the total number of points, 19.25, by 7, which is the number of days Jerry had been using his system. Based on this calculation, Jerry's average for his first week was 2.75. Although Jerry was off to a good start, he did miss his target of having a successful week, which would have been a daily average of 3 points. He missed by 1/4 point per day. When I explained this to Jerry, he seemed, somewhat disappointed, until I explained that he could still make up the difference. You see, as I mentioned before, the system allows for errors. Just because you didn't have a successful day, or, in Jerry's case, a successful week, it doesn't mean that you have failed. It just means that you need to try harder the next day, next week, or even the next month. Let's take a moment to have a closer look at Jerry's first week of progress with using his system. The first thing we need to take into consideration is that Jerry had an above average week. Having a daily average of 2.75 points is really about as close as you can get to having a successful week. He should have been proud of himself. Keep in mind that this was a big improvement from his previous behavior. In the beginning, it's important to keep your expectations realistic. Remember, most people overestimate what they can achieve in a month and underestimate what they can achieve in a year. Also, I pointed out that 3 days of his week he only received 2 points in total. If Jerry had just pushed himself a little bit harder on those few days and increased his points to, say, 2.5, he would have achieved a weekly average of 3 points, which would have given him his successful week. I pointed out that the difference between having a successful week and above average week was only a small handful of actions, and I was more than confident that in time, Jerry would be achieving his goal on a daily, weekly, monthly, and even a yearly basis. I continued to explain to Jerry that if he was to push himself just a little bit harder the upcoming week and achieve, say, a daily average of 3.25 points, the combined daily average for both weeks would increase to 3 points per day. Remember, I told him, this is a long-term program. Success doesn't happen in a day, and neither does failure. Think of it this way. There are 52 weeks in a year. Let's assume that half the time you're on track and achieving your daily goal of 3 points per day. Now, let's take the human condition into consideration and assume that sometimes, you're going to make some mistakes or you're going to lack the motivation to achieve your goal for whatever reason. Let's say about 25% of the time you only manage to achieve a 2.5 average. All you would need to do to achieve your yearly average of 3 points is to average 3.50 points the remainder 25% of the time. This is one of the secrets behind the system. It allows for what I refer to as the human condition. We all make mistakes. And we will all experience times when, well, we simply cannot motivate ourselves to take action, no matter how hard we try. And that's okay. The thing to realize is that if you continue using the system, no matter how bad you think you are doing, things will always average out. The reason for this is simply because if you are consistently focused on your results, you will begin linking pain to poor performance. This in turn will motivate you to take positive action, which in turn will make up for the times when the human condition comes into play. I believe this was the moment that Jerry really began to understand some of the power behind this system. I get it, Jerry began to explain. It's like last week, a couple of times I found myself getting, well, upset if I did something that I knew was going to cost me a point. For an example, one of the guys at the shop was about 10 minutes late getting back from lunch, and I completely overreacted. Once I calmed down, I felt bad, but truthfully, all I could think about was that I wasn't going to receive my 1/4 point. I was actually linking pain to my action. The funny thing is that since then, I noticed I really try to keep myself from losing my cool. Two of us shared a slight laugh, and it really pleased me to see that Jerry was beginning to understand just some of the power behind the system. Let me ask you this, I said. Have you noticed that it works the opposite way as well? Jerry's reply did not take long. Now that you mention it, he said, I always feel great when I do my light exercise in the morning, well, because I know I've just earned a 1/4 point. The same thing goes if I listen to something motivational or read, because I know I'm earning my points. And what do you think that's doing for you? I asked. Jerry smiled and replied, linking pleasure to my actions. Once again, the two of us shared a brief laugh. I continued to explain that it's hard to believe that a person can associate enough pleasure or pain by using such a simple system that it will motivate them to take action, but it's true. All the system is really doing is teaching us how to use pleasure and pain instead of having pleasure and pain use you. In some ways, the system is similar to having a to-do list. It's a known fact that people who use a daily to-do list link pleasure to simply ticking off items that they have completed, and pain to uncompleted items. The difference between using this system and a to-do list is that the system takes things to the next level by including your average and keeping you focused on the key areas of your life and not just simple daily tasks. Imagine the satisfaction you will receive from knowing that you had a successful week, month, or even a successful year. Trust me, it's a great feeling to be certain that your life is on track and you truly are successful. Next, I turn to the subject of how you determine if you're successful or not by asking Jerry the following questions. Do you currently consider yourself to be successful? If so, how do you determine that you are? What is success anyway? I could see that Jerry wasn't quite sure how to answer, so I went on to explain that, in my opinion, success is nothing more than a feeling or a state of mind. Basically, success is an emotion. Most likely, you determine if you're successful or not by applying a set of rules that you've set up for yourself in advance. We all have rules internally that we must fulfill in order to feel any emotion, even success. After all, that's all success really is, a feeling. More specifically, success is a feeling or an emotion we reward ourselves with whenever or if ever we fulfill all the rules required in order to be successful. But the interesting thing is, we are the ones who make the rules. We decide what must and what must not happen in order to experience the emotion of success. The problem is that the majority of us set up the rules completely wrong. We make the mistake of making them so hard to achieve that we rarely or never get the pleasure of experiencing the emotion that we desire. Even if we do, it's normally short-lived because we convince ourselves that we don't really deserve to feel this way, or we are just faking it. This is another one of the little secrets behind our system, I continued. We are setting achievable rules, action items, that we must achieve before giving ourselves permission to experience a certain emotion. For an example, if we achieve 3 points at the end of the day, we give ourselves permission to feel as if it's been a successful day. Or if we achieve 4 points, we give ourselves permission to feel as if it's been a very successful day. I took a moment to remind Jerry of what the point system represents as seen in the chart below. I also explained that it is possible to have an average that falls somewhere in between these points, such as a 1.5 or a 3.25, and advised him to determine what these numbers represent based on his own standard. 1 point equals below average. 2 points, average. 3 points, successful. 4 points, very successful. By creating a weekly, monthly, and even a yearly average of 3 or higher, you are consistently convincing yourself that you really do deserve to feel the emotion of success. After all, you know you have fulfilled all the rules because, well, you created them and you know exactly what they are. This provides you with absolute internal certainty that you deserve to feel successful, which in turn will make you more confident and produce even greater results. This is known as validating your beliefs, which plays a critical role in how you act or react in various situations. I explained the importance of validating your beliefs to Jerry and was impressed that he already had a good understanding of the principle. It's kind of like sports, he replied. The more a team wins, the more confident they become. The more confident they become, the more matches they win. The bookies even factor this in when calculating the odds. Even though I'm not what you'd call a betting man, I appreciated the analogy and was delighted that Jerry had a general understanding. Tell me this, Jerry continued. As I gain momentum and begin growing stronger, do I run the risk of losing my edge because obtaining an average of 3 is no longer a challenge? I took a moment to think before replying. What would you do if you decided to start training to run a marathon? Would you start out by running 26 miles? Jerry laughed and simply replied, if I decided to start training for a marathon in my current condition, I'd be lucky to start out by running a quarter mile. That's the point, I replied. You would start out by running what you are capable of running. However, as time passed, you would increase your distance bit by bit until you felt you were fit enough to run the entire 26 miles. Next, you might decide to work on improving your time by gradually increasing your pace. The system is similar. You start out doing what you're capable of doing, and as you grow stronger, you increase your action items. Thereby, you're constantly pushing yourself harder, so obtaining an average of 3 points is always a challenge. Allow me to give you an example, I continued. Let's take a look at your key area of health and fitness. Currently, you reward yourself with a 1/4 point provided that you don't smoke over 15 cigarettes per day. The reason for this is because previously, you were smoking over 20 cigarettes per day. Now, as you grow stronger, I would suggest you might consider changing that to say 10 cigarettes per day. Or instead of rewarding yourself with a 1/4 point for light exercise, you might consider changing that to light exercise and say a 30-minute walk. Jerry indicated he understood by asking what I consider to be an intelligent question. Would it not be easier to just strive to average a 4 instead of a 3? I explained to Jerry that the 4th point in the system is there to allow you to make up for the days you fail in your efforts to secure 3 points, or whatever goal you have set for yourself. Simply put, if your goal was to average 4 points, and the most you could reward yourself with in any one day is 4 points, the first bad day you would have would make it impossible to make up your average. You would be setting yourself up for failure. Jerry and I continued our conversation for some time until I was confident that he completely understood the importance of calculating his average and adjusting his action items as he grows stronger. I next turned our attention to the importance of making adjustments to his system depending on his schedule, season, the day, and time of week. You see, it's important to keep in mind that there will be days or even weeks that you will not be in a position to complete your action items. For an example, most individuals do not work on a Sunday, so it would make it difficult to earn the point for, say, your business or career action items. Or, say you had a family vacation. This is definitely a time not to be thinking or working on your career or your business, and most likely may affect some of the other key areas as well. Now in Jerry's case, his business was not open on Sunday. He normally saw Sunday as not only a day of rest, but a day of recuperation. The reason for his recuperation was because he generally would have a few too many drinks on a Saturday night. His standard routine would be to sleep until 11 a.m., then stumble into the kitchen for something to eat before flopping out on the couch to watch TV until dinner was ready. After dinner, he would return to his couch until he eventually had enough strength to drag himself into the shower, get cleaned up, and head back to the pub to meet with a few of his friends. Not exactly what you would call a productive day. After taking some time to review his actions, Jerry came up with the following action items and point values for what he refers to as his Sunday business and finance key area. 1/4 point, shop competition, minimum 2 shops. 1/4 point, mastermind meeting with Lorraine. 1/4 point, pay bills. 1/4 point, set week's budget. Jerry went on to explain why he felt these new actions were going to be so beneficial to both himself and his family. Normally Sunday is a wasted day in my week. Lorraine usually gets fed up at looking at me lying on the couch. I accomplish nothing in the home or for the business, and as usual, end up spending money at the pub we really can't afford. I could see by Jerry's expression and the tone in which he spoke that he was generally disappointed and somewhat embarrassed by his previous behavior. However, when he began to speak about his new action items, his entire demeanor changed, and he became quite excited. Now, Jerry continued, I'm going to get up early, drive to the shopping mall, and check out some of my competitors. This is something I used to really enjoy doing. However, over the last couple years, I just fell out of the habit of doing it. Not only will this be good for my business, because I will come up with new ideas and keep tabs on what the others are doing, but I also plan on bringing my son with me. He used to really enjoy going with me before, and it will give us a good chance to spend some quality father and son time together. If we plan it right, we can get up early and be back just in time to have breakfast with Lorraine and the girls. After breakfast, I'll head upstairs to my study for an hour or so and sort out the bills for both the home and the business. I usually do this at work, but it's so hard to focus because, well, of all the interruptions. I know that I'm not reviewing my bills properly and could be paying for items or services, well, I didn't even receive or just don't need. Also, once I pay the bills, I will be in a much better position for setting my weekly budget. I normally don't do this and have no idea how much I spend on a daily or even a weekly basis. However, the action I'm most looking forward to is my mastermind meeting with Lorraine. This is something we used to do when we first got married, and I truthfully don't know why we stopped. What we will do is go out Sunday evening for a cup of coffee, maybe a slice of pie. We will chat about everything that happened over the previous week and what's coming up in the current week. But the best part, we will do what we used to call dream build. We will talk about our goals, our plans, and how we can achieve them. When Jerry finished speaking, I was more than confident he was in the process of changing the direction of his life. You see, it's important to understand that every action we take is a cause set in motion. Or another way of thinking of it, for every action, there is a reaction. For an example, investing the time to learn the system is a cause set in motion. Making the decision not to apply what you learn is also a cause set in motion. The thing to keep in mind is that every action we take, no matter how big or how small, stacks up on the previous action, which is ultimately moving us in a certain direction. If we are not careful and don't pay attention to our actions, we could easily end up someplace, well, that we just don't want to be. Note: If you would like to use our free online calendar for tracking your progress, or what we refer to as your dashboard, please visit www.onesourcedashboard.com. Again, www.onesourcedashboard.com.